So, welcome to Where Energy Meets the Divine. I'm your host, Marie Manuchehri. And one of my favorite things to do is interview other people who I believe are on the leading edge of thought. And of course, the person I'm about to introduce doesn't need an introduction, but I mean, she's so cool and has accomplished so much that it's great to remind all of us about what Dr. Judith Orloff has experienced in this wonderful life. So, Dr. Judith Orloff is a New York Times bestselling author, psychiatrist, and an empath. And that's the word you want to really underline. She is the author of a new children's book, the new children's book. We're talking about it today, The Highly Sensitive Rabbit. The illustrations are gorgeous. You're going to love it, which tells a story of caring cottontail who is shamed for her sensitivities, but then learns to embrace them. Dr. Judith Orloff's other books include The Genius of Empathy, The Empath's Survival Guide, and Thriving as an Empath. Dr. Orloff also specializes in treating highly sensitive people in her medical practice. She has been featured on the Today Show, CNN, Oprah Magazine, the New York Times, USA Today. She has spoken on Google LA and TED Talk. So thank you so much for coming on the show, Dr. Orloff. It's a pleasure, as always, to have you. And this book is beautiful.
Thank you, Maria. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be here. So what made you want to write your first children's book? What inspired you?
Yeah, so I think the state of the world today inspired me because our children are going to inherit the earth. And the sensitive children already know that we need to support our earth, we need to support each other, we need to support the animals. They already know this. And so they need to be in good shape when they take over the world. And a lot of sensitive children don't have the tools to deal with the overwhelm that comes with being an empath or comes with being highly sensitive. So in a very simple way, I wanted to teach that little rabbit who is our heroine, Aurora, the rabbit, how to take a breath when she feels overloaded, how to find somebody to talk to when she needs some kind of a friend, how to find alone time, how to stick up for herself with her brothers who put her down and shame her. And so these were just tools that I wanted to give the children so they learn them early on so they don't have to struggle with this later.
Wow. I'm very touched by your comment about helping our future generations to be able to caretake our planet and the populations that live here. I'm like, I didn't expect, I mean, of course, what you said makes total sense, but I just think that's very high vibrational thinking, of course, like how do we help our future generations continue to take care of everything?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, because we're gonna come and go, and they're
Right.
the ones who are getting bigger and bigger, and they're running and gonna run everything. And so you want them to know what to do. You want them to know as a child, maybe, I got shamed, but then I had help. I had help about knowing that there's nothing wrong with me. It's a gift to be highly sensitive and that some people just can't handle it. And I need to go to the ones that can handle it and be my friends. And so
Wow.
it's important to learn early on. I wrote this book because I was a sensitive child and I was shamed horribly for my abilities. My parents, who were loving, they were doctors, they're physicians, 25 physicians in my family. And I was this nonlinear little girl who was very sensitive. And they finally said, don't mention another one of your intuitions or predictions at home. It's too upsetting. We don't want you to mention it. And you need to get tougher and you need to get stronger so you can belong in the world. Otherwise, you're going to be in big trouble. That was the message I got as a child. And it's very disconcerting as an only child to get that kind of a message. I can't change and be tough. I'm not tough. I mean, I'm tough, but in a different way. Wrong.
Well, I 1,000,000% agree with you because some kids can toughen up, but then they miss all of their intuitive abilities, right? They've blocked them all and they don't have access to them. And so then they're not in alignment. And then the sensitive kids are too afraid to show what they're hearing and seeing and feeling that could benefit their family, themselves, and the world. So Yeah, either way, it's just not a good resolution.
No, it isn't. But the sensitive kids need to find a voice. But a lot of times they get frozen and you ask them something and it's hard for them even to come out with an answer because they don't want to be hurt. They don't want to be jabbed. They don't want to be bullied.
Right,
They don't want to be called a crybaby. It's very
right.
frustrating to be called a crybaby, when you cry because you feel for the world.
Yeah, because and crying's healthy, actually. We need to emote and get our emotions out. We don't want them to stay stagnant in our body, creating diseases down the road.
Right. But I wanted to write this book so the children can sleep with this book, and they
Oh,
can keep it in their bed and hug it and look at it and know what to do. I just want them to know what to do when certain things happen and
well,
how
I'll
they.
be ordering. I'm so sorry. I'll be ordering copies for the little kids in our family for sure, and their
Oh,
parents.
thank you, Lorraine.
So I wanted to ask you, how are neurodivergent and sensitive children similar?
Well, I think we're all neurodivergent in a certain way, but highly sensitive people can be neurodivergent. In addition, they could be on the spectrum. They can, be have all these other qualities and ways of relating that may not be familiar to most people. And so it's important to meet the child where they're at to find out what they respond to in a sensory way, because they often get thrown off with too intense senses. The colors and the sounds and the people and the noise and the movements and just too much. It's too much. And so what they have in common, if someone's on the spectrum, they might not want to be touched in the same way. They might want, to have more of a request for being touched. Do you want to be touched now, as opposed to people just snuggling all of them, and they might not like that. So you have to talk to the child and find out what they like. And highly sensitive kids who are sensitive to sounds and touch that doesn't feel good, I think it's always a good thing to ask, do you feel like being hugged now? And to
Yes,
give the child permission to say no and to not
absolutely.
feel bad about it.
Absolutely. I think we want our population to be unique. Like we don't really want everyone to be exactly the same all the time. Then we lose our individualization. So whether we're calling it neurodivergent, which I agree with you, everybody's got some aspect of that, or highly sensitive, or all the different abbreviations, of what they've decided to diagnose children with. I think it's something we need to learn to celebrate and then learn how do we help support all these different aspects of humanity so that they can be successful.
Absolutely. And we do want people to be their unique selves and express that. And to have everyone get along and realize just because someone's a little different than you, that's a good thing. And that's something we need to embrace and have all kinds of friends. Just because we're neurotypical, doesn't make us better or worse than anybody else. We're just neurotypical. And so it's about honoring life and honoring people and having adults who can help children honor this too, because the adults are the role models. The children are constantly looking at the adults, whether they say they're doing it or not. They might say, "Oh, I'll never look at you. You're not important to me." But they're always looking. They're always looking and they're always modeling. And so who we are with them makes a big difference. If we're respectful with them and if we say they want to be alone and go, "Fine, honey, catch you later." I hear you. And just that honoring of I want to be alone and not to give them any flack about it.
Right. So, why do so many children get called overly sensitive in a shaming way? What do you think that is within our culture that we're not embracing their uniqueness?
It's a lack of sensitivity, really, in other people. In the story of Aurora, the rabbit, when there was a big storm and she hears the coyote cry, who is somebody who could harm rabbits. She worries about how he's doing and if he's okay and if he's with his friends or if he's hurting. And that's so typical of highly sensitive children. They're always worried about other animals and other people, whether they're predators or not. They were worried about the coyote. And I think that's a really positive thing, to be able, but she was overly worried and crying all the time, and she didn't have limit setting, and she didn't have boundaries, which is so important to learn how to have boundaries as a highly sensitive child. But their hearts are big, and that's what we want. We want big hearted people in the world, but we also want people who can center themselves. And so that's part of the technique that Aurora learns, is how to bring herself back to center, how to go and look at the moon. This is the activity she loves the most, is looking at the moon. And she always
Wow.
goes up and looks up. And that was me as a child. And as an adult, every night I look at the moon. It's so important to me, really important. And always as a child looking up at the moon, where is it? Why are the clouds covering it tonight? And she does that. That's her activity. And sometimes she does it with her animal friends, and sometimes she does it alone. Sometimes she does it with her mother, and they could just sit there in silence looking at the universe. I mean,
Hmm.
that's very beautiful.
It is gorgeous and stunning. And yet these kids are even kind of, you know, identified by bullies as good prey, and what do we do to help their parents protect them?
Well, the parents must protect them, and hopefully the kids, we have to encourage the kids to come to the parents to share about it. You don't ever want to keep it a secret, with the kids. So you want to give them permission. If there's any problems with bullies at school or anything that's going on, we have to nip it in the bud, because it's an epidemic everywhere. So we have to, not just for you, but for lots of kids. So you have to please tell us about it. We welcome that. And then the parents need to get involved and talk with the school authorities and have a zero policy for bullies. Bullies cannot be tolerated, and it's not fair to leave that little sensitive child in the schoolyard with the bullies and all the horrible friends who are laughing and mocking the child. It's not
Yeah, I
okay.
maybe even parents, that because so many schools still don't enforce, rules and regulations, because really the kids that are the bullies need some help. They need reorganizing, they need support. Their parents need to be re-educated. So maybe, like what you said, find a school that has a strong policy regarding that, so that even if because there are kids who are sensitive or witnessing another child being bullied who, like that's hard on them too. To witness it is very challenging.
And it's very hurtful to the child. My partner's grandson is on the spectrum, and he was being bullied so much at school that the grandparent who's raising him had to take him out of school and go into self-schooling, homeschooling. And it just, of course, made a huge difference in his life, and not to have that bullying all the time. But she tried her best, and she could not get the bullying to stop. And she
Wow.
tried her best, and she just
Wow.
took the kid out of school to homeschool him.
Well, we hope that that doesn't become an epidemic, and that we get, like you said in here, teaching sensitive children to set boundaries, to say no, because they could perhaps stop some of that that's happening in school, or teach some of their friends how to, if they're encountering bullying, how to set boundaries.
Absolutely. And if there's a child and you see your friend being bullied, you could go up to your friend and say, "Hey, let's leave here. Leave this place here and talk about it, and then go to the school authorities and insist on some kind of intervention."
Wonderful. So, how can highly sensitive and neurodivergent children center themselves when they're feeling overwhelmed? This is like so important, because as adults, we work on that a lot, so to be
We
able to help a
really
kid
will.
do that, oh my
Kids
gosh.
have to do that. Yeah, kids must do that. And you could learn, from others who are learning how to do that. And one of the things that Aurora learned is when she gets overloaded and dysregulated, how to just take a deep breath at that moment and calm your nervous system down, to stop, take a deep breath and calm your nervous system down. And then take another deep breath and calm your nervous system down, and do it 3 times, and then start to feel better. So you can have that control over your body. And that's very nice for children to learn that they could do that.
And I think kids can easily recognize tools that work for them. They're actually very intelligent creatures. Children are very wise, especially if we leave them alone. To some degree, if we let them be their authentic selves. And so I can only imagine that they can feel that as they're taking those deep breaths, that they're moving into, more of their parasympathetic autonomic system and not in the fight or flight place, that's so challenging.
Mm-hmm. That's right. But we need to intervene at this point. And that's when I saw this book as a gentle intervention, a friendly intervention of, the mother, the grandmother, the fathers. Lots of fathers are coming to my book signings. Nice. I like that too, where you just sit down, snuggle up and read. And part of my book signings are doing a storytelling, and that means reading the book to the group of children and parents who are there. It's a very
That must be so fun and rewarding for you to be around all these lovely, sensitive kids and then their parents who want to help them, and probably their parents finding out that they're sensitive too in these book signings and conversations and reading of the book.
Oh, yes. And they're all sitting together looking and reading and turning each page. So it's a very different kind of book signing than I'm used to with my other books, which are mainly adults. And so the children sit, and some of these bookstores have built castles in the children's section. So they
Oh,
have this, beautiful, magical world to sit around in and listen to storytelling.
wow.
So that's
So
a new world for me. I've never done this before. So it's
I think
very
it's amazing. I think it's amazing and perfect timing for our world, because a lot of people are waking up and we're having to make a lot of different decisions and choices. And it's a tricky time in the world. And so your book is so invaluable, again, not just for the children, but for the parents, the grandparents, step parents, aunts and uncles, everybody to be able to, you know, understand that it's okay to be sensitive, and we really need to pay attention to the sensitive people because they're going to lead us in a positive direction of how to be
Yes.
humanely kind to everyone on earth,
That's
right?
what we want to do, and learn how to set boundaries with those that are not kind. You don't want to just be
Yes.
open. I've always taught that you need to have protection techniques also with some of the energies out there in the world, which it's people don't feel safe. They feel like they're not safe. And one way for children to feel safe is to learn how to set boundaries, to learn how to take control over their energy, to be in the bubble, to not just be this victim, feeling the angst of the world. You can do
Mm-hmm.
things, and you can center
Mm-hmm.
yourself, and children can do it, and adults. If adults did everything in this book, they would be really, really in good shape.
I couldn't agree with you more. Could not agree with you. And the illustrations are beautiful. I mean, the holidays are coming up. I mean, you don't need to wait, of course, to the holidays to buy a wonderful book like this. But, if you're looking for gifts for any of the children in your family, or for maybe a highly sensitive adult who needs some beautiful pictures to look at and some reminders about how to set boundaries, and what about alone time? You write in the book about alone time. Maybe you could share how important that is and why sensitive people need, time out, so to speak.
That's a very important, essential piece for an empath's well-being, to have alone time. Sensitive kids and adults just can't go, go, go all the time. It won't work. That's not part of our temperament. Too much, too much, and overload. And if you keep pushing, you go way over the red line, and then you go into sensory overload, which is extremely painful. And you don't want to go there. It really hurts. It's really horrible. And it takes a while to calm it all down, to really
Mm-hmm.
come back to your quiet
Mm-hmm.
self again. But we
Mm-hmm.
don't want any kind of hyperstimulation to gather momentum. You want to be able to go in your room, close the door, turn down the lights, put on nice music, look out the window, do whatever you want to do quietly so that you can calm the sensory overstimulation down. That's
Wow.
really, really important for everybody.
Wow. One of the things I do, because I have 6 grandchildren now, and, it's wild. When everybody's here for the holidays, it's wild. And so my dog and I escape and go for a walk. We just have to let go. We just have to get out for a little while, and just look at the trees and we just need it. Yeah.
That's right. I know. Well, that's so smart of you to go for a walk with your dog, and so you both can escape. And no, none of
Right.
the little ones follow after you.
No, I don't let them. I'm like, Mimi needs a break. I'll be back in a little bit. And yeah, I don't let them come when, I'm starting to get overwhelmed. So, what are some of the behaviors of neurodivergent children?
Well, neurodivergent children can love looking up at the sunlight. They can love quiet, beautiful things. When they look around them, they could love something that's soft to hold, maybe a stuffed animal or something like that. They have different ideas that need to be expressed. And so it's important to listen to the thought process and where it goes. It's very important to understand the sensory needs. If the neurodivergent child says, I don't like to be touched, don't take it personally. It's not you. Luckily, the child can speak up. The neurodivergent kids that can't speak up, who are nonverbal, that's more of a problem. But in terms of natural creativity, I've done so many podcasts with the neurodivergent community with this book, and
Wow.
it's been such a joy. There's such an innocence and a joy in the reception and in communicating together. It's just a beautiful thing. And people in general are stuck on one way of communicating with each other, and it's just kind of boring and it's not applying to all the people in the world, but they do it because that's all they know. And for me, learning to communicate on different levels with different people who have different sensory situations, no, it's beautiful. I just love it. I mean, I've always wished that I could be alive, when the extraterrestrials come here to
You
see
might
all.
be. You might be, Dr.
Well,
Orloff. It could happen a lot sooner than you think. It could happen.
I'll stay open to that. But to be able to communicate, maybe some
Yeah.
people don't even communicate verbally, but you've developed yourself so you can communicate with them in a nonverbal way. And so it's there's just so many ways to communicate, and we're so short-sighted here on Earth that thinking this is the only way to do it. So I enjoy any kind of nuances of communication to explore with each other how we can be together and have fun and have it be comfortable.
I think you're describing heaven on earth, to be able to see the sensitivities of life and language and culture and to really care and love for one another. That's what we need to invite back into our cultures, into the human realm, because what we've felt is normal and how we need to behave is not. It's not helping the planet, it's not helping animals or humanity. And we need to embrace the sensitivity.
Exactly. And the same goes with talking to animals. When you talk to animals, you look at their eyes. You look at, let's say, a little dog's eyes looking up at you. I mean, what do you want to do when you see those eyes?
Yeah, I know. I know. My dog Charles, sometimes I can actually hear him, but it's not every day. It's usually a special moment when his energy is really elevated and we're on a really cool walk and I can hear his brain, and it's really quite lovely and high vibrational. But many more times he's sitting in front of me, giving me the death stare.
Oh,
And we've already been on a walk. He has food. Usually it's he wants to go to bed. He's tired. I finally figure it out, but it's like 7 o'clock at night. I'm not tired. But it feels like the death stare. It's really not unkind, but he's looking directly into my eyes and he's not letting go because he wants to tell me something. And that's where we need to be as a culture of people, to be curious about that and to wait and kind of sense out whatever might be going on between whom we're communicating with, just through our beautiful souls, that our eyes that are the window to that part
Right,
of ourselves.
right. And when we go by the birds talk to us. You have to open up to this whole intuitive way of viewing the world. And just because they don't speak in the English language necessarily doesn't mean they're not talking to you. It doesn't, there's so many creatures that you could talk to. The flowers you can hear. Emerson says that the God laughs in the flowers.
Oh,
And it's true. It's like, look at these flowers. They're ecstatic. The point is, I think, in terms of the highly sensitive rabbit, is to reclaim that inner child that could do all this more easily as a child, and as an adult to have that inner child with you. And people have bought this book and come and said, I have come for my own inner child, and I love that. I just love that. Because we need to protect our own inner children, whether we have outer children or not. We
right.
have to protect our inner child forever, as
I
long as
think that I couldn't agree with you more. I think inner child work is probably the most highlighted form of healing, and it is a forever process because different things come into view that you didn't work on before with your inner children, because you
Mhm.
didn't have the knowledge or the experience about it. So yeah, I think it is such a high level form of inner growth and consciousness. And this book, it's I think it's just really naming out so beautifully from a highly skilled, highly educated person like yourself that this is something about humanity that we need to embrace now more than ever before, that this is what we need to do to continue our evolutionary process so that we can become multisensory people and be available when the aliens come, right? Not
Yeah,
reactive.
communicate. Communicate. We empaths love to communicate. They love to hear where
Mhm.
you're coming from. They want to see you, where you're coming from, not where I'm coming from, but where you're coming from. It's something so important to empaths to connect and to get to know you and to see your ways. Whether you're an alien in your ways or my ways.
Right.
I love that. I think that to me is the thrill of being an empath. And certainly as a psychiatrist, I do that too. I combine being a psychiatrist and an empath to know people's ways. And somebody wrote me a note saying that they love watching my spiritual ways, when I talk. And I thought, that's great. I love that they like watching my spiritual ways. I'm thinking, what ways? But, I do, I have my ways, but the way that they were seeing it, it's the way people see you. I mean, you can't depend on them always saying good things, but the way sensitive people see you can be very illuminating and can
It
teach you
can.
so much about yourself.
It
And,
can.
and that's what I think Aurora in the book wanted. She wanted to be seen. She wanted to be heard. She wanted to be felt as important and that she didn't have to change and stop crying, stop looking at the
Yeah.
moon. She could just be who she wanted to be. And it was through the gentleness of these other desert animals, one of which is my favorite animal. It's the javelina.
Ooh.
Do you know the javelina?
No, I don't. I mean, I've read this book. It's beautiful, but I didn't know about the javelina before. I didn't know about that animal. So,
No.
so yeah, please enlighten us.
That's why I wanted to incorporate these animals that no one has ever heard of to teach them about
Yes.
these beautiful
Ooh,
animals,
it's
the
gorgeous.
wild boar of the desert. And, one day a javelina ambled by. She said, I'm sensitive like you. Sometimes
Oh,
when I get upset, it helps me to talk to a friend who understands me. Do you want to talk? Aurora did. The javelina joined her, and they soon became fast friends. Sometimes she enjoyed being with her, and sometimes she preferred being alone. And both things were okay.
Wow. That's so beautiful because that's a big part of how we help sensitive individuals is if they can have people that they can talk to and share their experiences with when they want to.
Absolutely. And the point I wanted to make in this book, the javelina isn't necessarily a traditionally beautiful animal, though I see her as beautiful. And she's a wild boar, and sometimes people would be afraid of her, and people consider her different. That's why I wanted her here, so she could be friends with Aurora, as I knew they would be, as I see them in the book, connecting. Um, and to bring in somebody that's different, somebody who's just not, one type of animal, but all kinds of animals who could come together and love each other and learn from each other. And in the back of the book, we have a section on all the desert animals and who they are and what their names are to educate the children. The coyotes, the javelinas, the western spotted skunk, the cactus wrens, the crickets, the kangaroo rats, all the miraculous animals of the Sonoran Desert, which is just south of Tucson.
And the plant life too. You have another index about that so that people can see what the plant life actually looks like, which is exciting. It's beautiful. The cactus and the brittle bush, the yucca plant. Yeah, it's really beautiful. It's a stunning book and it's timely. We need it. But ahead of its time in terms of we haven't really talked about sensitivity in this way, I think, in mainstream life. We're not honoring it. We're like, how do we fix it? How do we medicate it? How do we get it to stop reacting? And that's not healthy. Like everyone's made in the image of creation. Everyone is an irreplaceable part of the divine.
Yeah.
And so there's reasons why sensitive people are here, good reasons. And if we can learn to embrace that fact, then we're all going to benefit from that reality and that truth.
It is. And to embrace the sensitive part in yourself, to embrace the sensitive inner bunny. Everybody's got a sensitive inner bunny. And that's what this is about. And to, maybe there's some people listening, they're very macho. They go, I don't have a sensitive inner bunny. That's okay. You don't have to have one. That's just fine. But some of us do have one. Many of us do have one inside.
I think everyone has one, whether they realize it or not. And then some people, because I know many people like myself who I didn't know I was sensitive till I recognized I was an intuitive. I had no idea, that because I'm tough, so I can handle a lot. But that intuitive part, which is such an important part of who we are as we develop as a country, is culture, as a world, gets embraced through the sensitivity, gets to be valid and apparent through embracing that sensitive part of ourselves. If that becomes strong, that intuitive part of ourselves. And that's where we're moving collectively as a species of beings. We're moving into our intuition. Whether people want to believe that or not, it is the truth. That's where we're heading.
Yes, definitely. Everybody can begin today to reincorporate the inner child within. I mean, you could see it in both of us as we're talking. I hope you can see through us, and not just the adult parts, but the child part that is coming through. I see it, and it's a beautiful thing. And it doesn't mean you're not strong. It means that you could connect to this. You're strong enough to connect to it, and you could go through ups and downs. And you could learn how to center and ground yourself, learn how to get through life, learn how to hold on to your sensitivities as you're going through difficulties. This is just part of the path of being an empath, of being on the spiritual path and opening up to the sensitivities of the spiritual realm that are here on earth. And that's part of opening up to your inner child. And this Aurora character here, she's actually me. My nickname is Aurora. Like
I was going to ask you. I didn't know it was related to you, but I knew the name was like super important. So that's even more touching that it's your nickname.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm Aurora. So it's about my childhood, and that's me in the bunny. So that was fun. That is
Oh,
fun.
wow. Yeah, that's really beautiful. I mean, it makes it even more special knowing that we're connecting with you, Dr. Orloff, who's helped the human race and the empathic, aspects of humanity to the best of your ability and then some with all of your writings and teachings and seminars and your private work. Like, we're so lucky that you've brought this to our attention decades ago so that, we can embrace it now with the children who've we've always had sensitive children, but now
Mhm.
that children tend to be over medicated or medicated unnecessarily
That's
to
right.
block these sensitivities. We don't want that for our generations. We don't want that.
No, but we want to get them before they go on the meds to be able to ascertain if they're an empath. I have a 20-question self-assessment test in the Empath Survival Guide that all children should take and all adults should
Mhm.
take to determine how much of an empath you are, and not go the route of medication first and foremost. You need to deal with your empathic qualities and learning to take the alone time and learning to calm down the sensory overload and auto regulate. So you have to learn all these things. And it's a mistake to just go from zero to meds. It's a mistake. I'm not saying sometimes meds aren't needed.
Right,
Um, I'm not, I want to make clear, I'm not
right.
saying
Of
that, but
course.
it's
Yeah.
not usually the first step
Yeah.
when you have an empath. That's not the first thing you do.
Right. I think the people who require medication, even for depression and anxiety, are a small percentage. That there's something biochemically perhaps not working in their brain that we can't get to work the way we'd like it to help them. But the majority of individuals need to learn what they're feeling, need to sit with their feelings, need to learn, as you've so beautifully spoke about, to self-regulate. How can they listen to themselves and believe in themselves? I think also a lot of adults medicate themselves with alcohol. They drink a lot. I mean, in the world, not just in the US, but in the world, I think a lot of sensitive adults I'm going to have a glass of wine every day after work because it was a tough day. And they have more than one, obviously. And that may temporarily help, but it's not getting them into the consciousness of their true authentic self.
That's so true. That's another topic. I wrote a chapter on empaths and addiction in the Empath Survival Guide, because that was a phase I went through as a teenager, trying to run from my abilities. And I talked about my journey in the Empath Survival Guide and in Second Sight, my first book. And I'm very open about it. But there's so many empaths who do turn to drugs and alcohol
Right.
and want to numb themselves and they want to shut off their sensitivities. But then when they get clean and sober, they're also recovering empaths, where they begin to embrace their empath self without the drugs and alcohol or any other addiction.
Right.
And it's very
And
exciting.
it's so exciting. And I think when we're, as adults medicating children, we're sending them a message really early on. You can't handle yourself. You don't know what's going on. You're out of control. We're going to give you these drugs. And then when they get older, they may turn to other forms of medication like alcohol or other things. And so we're not sending the right message. This is the right message. This beautiful book is where we need to be putting our energy. I wish every school taught this to all the kids, and all the parents.
I do too. And if you could take the book and give it to a library, that would be a wonderful thing, so the children can have access to it.
Well, your publisher sounds true, and I don't know exactly what how they operate right now. They're my publisher too, but it's been a little while since I've published with them. But I think they send books, maybe not to all the kid
Hmm.
school
Hmm.
libraries, but I think they send them to the libraries around the country. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I get such a thrill when I see that the book is in some obscure library in the middle of the South in some little town. They go, how did it get there?
It's incredibly exciting. It's
Yeah.
incredibly exciting, to know that your work is available. It's on a shelf where anyone could grab it and
Mhm.
spend, several weeks with it. And yeah, so people can get this book anywhere, obviously, right?
Yes, and it's on my
Amazon.
website, which is
Yes.
drjudithorloff.com.
Yes, I'm going to say that again. drjudithorloff.com. That's Dr. Orloff's website, where you can find everything, even her tests, her other books, anything that you would want to know, and how to reach her and connect with her and what she's doing in the world. So what are some of your other things that you've got underneath the hood cooking on these days?
Well, I'm not quite there yet because I'm still with Aurora and I'm still out and about with this children's book. And I usually don't try and overload myself with too many projects,
Smart.
but
Smart.
I do have something in mind. But I just want to go slow. I don't like jamming myself up at all. No,
Well,
this is my now. The Aurora, highly sensitive rabbit. It's a delightful period of time for me, and I'm not ready to give it up
well,
yet.
you're a wonderful role model for all of us, to really be present and, absorb the moment and enjoy it until you feel that authentic, spike of inspiration to go do another project. And we love that you're devoting your time and energy to this, because it's so necessary around the world. It's fascinating. It's wonderful.
There's so much to learn in this area that I didn't have available with adult books. There's a whole different level of learning that comes through, which is really interesting to me. I'm learning a lot from everybody I'm meeting.
Wow. You might even write more children's books.
Maybe, you never know.
So, if you could give any advice to the parent out there who realizes they have a sensitive child, and is going to be ordering your book pronto, of course, but any other advice that you could offer right now on the podcast that's going to be heard, is there anything you want to add?
You want to meet your child where they're at. If they come home upset, you want to say, honey, what happened? You can talk to me about it without getting triggered and without getting anxious, because your anxiety will spill over on the child. You want to try and center yourself as best as possible when your child's upset. You don't want their anxiety to feed your anxiety and then everything blows. You want to, take that time. If you see your child's upset and you think, oh my God, how am I going to handle this? Go off for just a couple minutes, breathe, center, put your hand on your heart, be in your powerful adult self, go out to face the child. And you could look at the child in the eyes. Very important how you look at a child.
Mm.
And you very loving, very calm, and ask the child what's happening, what happened at school, listen to what's going on. And then if they're just too stimulated at the moment, you might want to suggest going in their room and quieting down, and they don't have any pressure. They don't have to do anything. So you just watch where the child is at. You don't do so much what's good for you primarily, but what's good for them at the moment. And usually the key to a lot of things is decreasing stimulation. And if you can
Mm.
get to a quieter state, you can deal with it, whatever it is. Sometimes sensitive children, they don't like to be one thing after another after another. They don't like it. And the parents sometimes do like it. They like a lot of activity but the child maybe not so much. So you have to find that balance in your household with that.
I think that's incredible advice. And even the parent could go sit on the couch and take a little time out themselves too, and reconfigure their own neurological remedies, before they meet in the middle and start all over again.
Right. Have a cup of tea and take a breath. And the child might be running around, but you can, give yourself that. And then at the end of the cup of tea, you can reevaluate the situation and try to meet the child where they're at and help them to calm down. You want to help them to calm down.
Beautiful. Dr.
Yeah.
Orloff, as always, it is an incredible joy to see you, to hear your voice, to read your beautiful new book. I absolutely, absolutely love it. The Highly Sensitive Rabbit, on sale everywhere. And of course, go get it now for your inner child, for your children, for all the young people on the planet, so that we can continue
And
this
for Christmas.
evolutionary process. And for Christmas, yes.
Mm.
And for Christmas, yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Orloff. I love spending time with you. It's just such a joy. Thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.